Today is October the 4th, 2001. My name is Charla Henson. I'm interviewing Russell J. Dillon for the 12th Armored Division collection, and we are at the opening weekend of our museum in Abilene, Texas. I appreciate you letting me talk to you today. I want to know your full name, where you were born, and the date.
Okay. Well, my full name is Russell J. Dillon. I was born in Johnsville, Ohio, March 19th, 1921. Makes me 80. And that's in Montgomery County, Ohio. And
what did your family do?
And my family, well, I grew up on a dairy farm, and I recall starting to help my father deliver milk when I was probably 6 years old or something like that. Just a small dairy farm. We sold milk there in a couple of small towns. But anyway, I continued to live on the farm with my folks, well, really up until I went into the service. I started working for a General Motors plant probably a year and a half or so before I went into the service, along with delivering milk all the time. But anyway, this General Motors plant was the Inland Manufacturing in Dayton, Ohio, and I worked various jobs there: mail carrier, war projects coordinator's office, where we assembled or saw that the carbines that were being made for service were made at that time. And so from there I was drafted by Uncle Sam to go in the service, and which I did.
Okay, what was that date and how old were you at that time?
Pardon?
How old were you and what was the date when you went into the service, drafted?
Oh, I went into the service, I believe it was October 22nd of 1942. But you asked me a while ago about my family. Do you want me to tell you more about my family, or
where were they from originally?
Well, my father came from Virginia, and my mother, she was from Ohio. But there was 5 children in our family. I was the middle one. I had a sister, the oldest, and then a brother older than myself, and a brother younger than me, then a baby sister. My older brother went into the service too, so there was 2 in our family that served during the service during the war. And actually, my folks had a 2-star flag that they kept all the time. Was pretty proud of that, and we kept them posted as much as we could all the time, and they appreciated that, and they wrote us faithfully, and so it was a nice family relationship. And fortunately, my brother and I both came back without.
Where did he serve? What was his?
He was in the Coast Guard Artillery, and he actually just served along the coast here in Florida and I think New Jersey, and wound up in Alaska at Kodiak. And so he had that experience.
Tell me where you went into basic training at.
Well, now I went into basic training. First I was enlisted at over in Indiana at Fort, it was Harrison, I believe. Anyway, and then was sent to Camp Campbell, Kentucky, and was placed in the 12th Armored Division. So I was put in there right in the beginning. my service there, I was, well, first, when they saw my information card that I was a mail clerk at the Inland Manufacturing Company, well, they needed a mail. They were just getting the company started, and so they saw I was a mail clerk, so they needed a mail clerk. So that's what I got right off the start, was to being a mail clerk. Well, that was pretty nice because while they were up for breakfast, then I went to the post office and picked up the mail, and I got it sorted. And by the time they were finished breakfast, then we had mail call. And after mail call, well, then they went on to their basic training. And of course, I hadn't had my breakfast yet, so I had to miss a lot of that basic training because I had to go have breakfast. So anyway, I was mail clerk there for, I don't know how long it was, but then they needed a company clerk. And so they saw that I could type, and so they wondered if I'd be interested in being the company clerk. And I thought, well, yeah, that'd be all right. So anyway, that's what I wound up being, the company clerk for Troop D, the 92nd, all through the service. Actually, when excuse me. Actually, when I was being interviewed, when I first got to Camp Campbell and was being interviewed and so forth, why, they asked me, can you take shorthand? And I says, no, I sure can't. Well, they said, we're looking for someone that can take shorthand and type, because the general of the division needs a secretary. And so I missed out by not taking shorthand when I was in school. Anyway, I might have had an opportunity to be the general's secretary, which would have been kind of nice. But anyway, I was pleased to be company clerk. Got to be pretty close to all the guys because I made out their payroll and things of interest to them.
Tell me what, I'm going to ask you, since you were at Camp Campbell early on,
yeah.
Physically, what did Campbell look like when were you there like the first month that it was established?
Well, it was, of course, was more troops that kept coming in. The buildings were all there, as I recall, and it's Fort Campbell now, I understand, but it was Camp Campbell back then. And it was, as I remember, all the buildings that I don't remember any being built after we were there. So it was pretty much the same, although, like I say, there was more troops coming in all the time till they filled up the division. And so we, of course, having basic training there, was out on maneuvers from Camp Campbell and experienced that. And that was quite an experience, as I remember, because it was a rainy season or something, and it was just muddy as could be, and it wasn't the most pleasant weather to be out in. But anyway, we did what we were supposed to do.
On the maneuvers, how were you involved in the maneuvers, the Tennessee maneuvers?
Well, being company clerk, I had to carry my, well, I guess you'd call it my desk. It was a box, probably at least about 18 inches square, and we kept all the records in that. And of course, I had to tote that desk everywhere we went. But I just remember it was a wooded area, and I don't remember too much of being involved in too much training out there, other than taking care of my clerk's job.
If you were, let's say, a man just came into Company D. Explain to us exactly the process of getting him in, what kind of things you had to take care of, all those kind of things that we would not know about.
Well, really, if a new man came into the company, of course, I would get all his personal records, so I could make out his, I forget the form that was called, but it was a sort of in a little booklet form, but that we kept all their records in. And so I would complete that information, and he would be assigned then to, and I didn't do the assigning. The Captain Bartholomew was our commanding officer, and as I recall, he was the one that would assign them to what they would be doing. And then our first sergeant, Captain Koch, he, of course, would follow Captain Bartholomew's orders and see that they did what they were supposed to do. But as far as I was concerned, I just completed their information for their personal form that I had for them.
When they came to you and you got their personal papers that talked about family and where they were from and medical conditions?
It had all the information, where they were from, date of birth, and all that sort of thing. And as I recall, it did ask for their parents' name. I just sort of forget what all was on that book, but anyway, we got all their personal information that we needed.
Now, when you were D Company.
Yes.
You were D Company. Was there a clerk in each company? And then
there was a clerk for each company. Yeah. And actually, when we got overseas, well, we all traveled together with the headquarters unit, which was to the rear echelon of the division. Of course, the reconnaissance squadrons, they were up front, leading the path, so to speak. But anyway, I wouldn't get up front really, and on paydays, why, we had to see that they got paid, no matter where they were. So, but anyway, I can't think anything right offhand that ought to be.
When you came over to Barclay, what kind of training did you receive? Did you go through any combat training or shooting or any of that?
Well, we all had to go on the rifle range and get that. We all had to go on the marches, and carry our equipment, and the normal procedures of training. We, tried to be in good physical shape, and mental is, and follow orders.
Was your training and experience at Campbell and Barclay, were they what you expected?
Oh, I think pretty much. I knew I was in the service and I had to follow orders, and I knew there was be training involved, of course, because you had to know what you were supposed to do, and had to be physically able to do it. And they weren't, as I recall, they weren't too hard on us any time, although we knew we had to stay on the straight and narrow. I I didn't have any problems. Of course, like I say now, I had it easier than a lot of them being the company clerk because I didn't get involved in just everything that the company did because I had to be keeping the records up to date and so forth. And so.
Were you, you said you were back more with the headquarters stuff. Were there times that you were around the generals and stuff as they planned and you were a part of that? Or you heard what was going on?
Not really. We didn't get in on interviews or on committee meetings or anything like that that we knew what was going to be happening. See, as I recall, we just followed along, and whatever happened, we were there to do what we were supposed to do.
Tell me about what your day would look like once you. Tell me about landing in La Havre and some of that.
Well, when
Germany,
we were,
England.
yes, when we were going overseas, of course, we was in what they call an armada, number of ships, and the ship that I was on was, or we were on, was the flagship, and we got the orders of where we were supposed to land and that sort of thing. But I recall this one night, it was probably one of the worst storms that I'd ever experienced. But anyway, the ship was just pointing up and going down. The waves were huge, and it was lightning. The wind was blowing. I know I was on guard duty there for a couple of hours on that ship that night, and really I just stayed in the hallway and held on to the railing. You just couldn't walk. And there were so many guys sick. Oh my, because it was an experience. But anyway, and also, as I understood it, I knew we were dropping depth bombs. I could hear that. But we were being chased by subs, and we were, none of us were hit or anything, but I don't know if we hit any of them with the depth bombs we sent down, but it was quite a night. I'll remember that. But anyway, we landed. We were supposed to land in France, at Le Havre, and before we got there, we got orders, as I understand it, to change course and land in England instead. So we went to England, and we were there, I don't know, a few days, not too many. And then things quieted down at Le Havre, and we were able to go in there and land there and get on our way. And so I remember our first night, I was in a half track, and it got rainy that night, and I decided, well, I'm just going to go out and take my duffel bag and lay underneath the half track, and that way it wouldn't get wet. But anyway, the next morning when I woke up, whenever it was, I remember the bottom of where my feet were, they were in water, and that was my first experience there in France. But we traveled on, and I forget just how far we got before we got into any action, but it was a ways. But anyway, went into France and on into Germany. And
what was the feeling? What was the feeling of headquarters and the people you were around when you knew that the first real battle was fixing to happen? Or was there that day, we're going to see action today?
Oh, it was a rather odd feeling to when we first got to where there was action. I remember what I first remember was that we got in front of the large guns that were firing, and I remember hearing those go off and the missiles, going over us, and you have a little odd feeling knowing that you're there, and so, but fortunately, there's none of my immediate folks that I was with, was hit or anything like that. And I myself thank the Lord, but I wasn't around. Well, I should say one time when I got out of the Jeep, was in some town. I don't know where it was anymore, and there was a puddle of water right there side of me where I got out, and somebody took a shot at me, and the bullet hit in that water, So they're pretty close, but that's as close as I know of anything giving me any problems.
Right. Tell me what it was like during the Battle of Herlishan, being back and hearing, or what that experience was like for y'all.
Well, you just of course, there were bombers were going over a lot, and that was quite a sight. It just seemed like hundreds, bombers flying over, and they would go, and then after some time, then they'd be coming back. The battle itself there. Like I say, here I was in the rear echelon, so I can't give you any experience of being right in the battle,
In fact, I'm wanting to know, what was it like being back and hearing, and what was that like?
Well, you just knew that your boys were up there, and you just prayed that they were, kept safe, but you knew that probably some things could happen, and which they did. And so it was just knowing you had to be there, knew you had to do it, and so it was, had that feeling too. Naturally, you'd rather be in some other place probably, but you knew somebody had to be there, so why not you, and so.
Did y'all lose D Company?
Pardon?
Did you lose any members of the D Company in that?
Oh, yes. We lost, I suppose there's at least half a dozen or so killed. I do have that on record. But then a number were injured, wounded, some taken prisoner of war, and but I don't know. I lost some good friends, that I thought a lot of. But anyway, that's the way it went,
Do you, we don't ever know about this. How, you as the clerk, how did you deal with when you got word? And I mean, you just had to do your job, so you had to process the papers. And
yeah.
How did you find out, and what did you have to do?
Well,
you kind of did it afterwards, the
yeah.
loss of life.
And being back in the rear echelon like we were, I would get reports daily from the first sergeant. There'd be some liaison that would bring the information to us. And then I would record this information, whatever it was, in the person's own record. And you know, you you get word of somebody being killed or wounded. It had its effect on you, but you had to do it, and you just had to keep on going.
What did you use within yourself? What characteristics do you have inside you at that point that let you do that? Did you have to process that?
Well, you just knew that it was happening. You knew that this is war, and when you went into the service, you knew that there was that possibility that maybe you wouldn't come back, and so I'm thankful that I'm compassionate, but still I can overcome, or I can go with the situation. But I think anyone that has a heart, for fellow man would feel a loss and so forth. But anyway, you just knew you had to go on, and that's what you did.
Were you in charge of communicating that with family, or who?
Not myself. Of course, there was other folks that did that. But I didn't. We, of course, they are commanding officer or someone would get the word to the right people that would be the ones to get the news to the parents or their loved one, whoever it was.
What was it like going through Europe during winter?
Oh, it was. Of course, by the time like I say, we were in the rear echelon, and the places we would go through, why, it had been a lot of fighting and a lot of bombing and things of the buildings. And most every town we'd get to go through, why, it was pretty well bombed out. Some of them were practically a total loss. But there'd be a lot of time. I mean, when we would set up in a lot of these towns with our offices, the headquarters, and usually there were sufficient buildings around that wouldn't be occupied, and but the buildings we'd just move into and set up. But then there would be some of the villages or some of the towns smaller towns that wouldn't be hit or what have you. People were still there, and they were very receptive to us, as I remember. We'd be in one place for several days, and I remember this one town we was in, there was a bakery that we were, us company clerks, were in a large room up above this bakery. And oh my, that smell just about got us. But anyway, that baker was very good. He'd give us bread, French. This was in France, I guess. It was French bread. And oh my, was that ever good. We, one of the fellows, he's a little Italian, as I remember, forget which company clerk he was, what company, E or C or something. But anyway, he got a package from home. We would get packages from, they'd finally catch up with us sometimes. And he had, forget this package, but had a lot of spread that you could put on. And we had a pot-bellied stove up there on that second floor that we had going, and we would put our bread on there and toast it a little bit and spread it, and that was quite a treat. That was quite a treat.
Y'all were billeted in the homes, is what you said. Did the people leave, or?
Yes, we would, in Germany especially, I remember being in some lovely homes. Castle-like affairs. I remember this one we were in, it was beautiful, and they had a large piano in there, a baby grand piano and all, and not a one of us could play the piano. But we could sing, so we sang without the piano. But there, yes, we were billeted in some very nice places. I don't remember the names of the towns or anything like that, but.
Tell me about the camaraderie.
The who?
The camaraderie between those of you in the back echelons. Do you think you had, as you perceived that, was there, since you didn't especially expect to, I guess, there's always a chance you were going to be killed, but was it different, do you think, than it was up at the front?
Oh, for where we were, oh yeah, it definitely was, because we actually didn't get into any battles or anything, the headquarters units the parts that I was in. Now, we would be close to the enemy a lot of times. Matter of fact, I can remember being probably within a quarter of a mile of the enemy, overnight, and but didn't get into any fighting or anything. We and the company clerks, we did carry what we called a grease gun, and if we needed, to be involved that way, why? But I never had to use it. Never had to use mine, and so we were just fortunate. We were just fortunate.
Did you carry the grease gun with you all the time, or just?
Oh yeah, That was our firearm, and yeah, we had that all the time.
So you'd put it down beside you, or?
Well, just it was close by. I knew where it was in case it need be, but I can't say that I had it right with me all the time. But anyway, I was trying to think of something else there. I thought I remembered, but.
Tell me, is there a day that stands out the very most in your wartime experience? When you think of your experiences, there's one or two experiences, either a day or little spots of thoughts that you recall.
Gosh, there was different things that I would get I remember one time I saw a air battle between a couple of fighters, one ours and a German, and it was right above me. And that was sort of a scary feeling, to think, well, maybe one of them's going to come down on.
Can you describe it for us?
Well, it was just it went on. They were fighter planes and chasing one another. And finally, our American plane shot down the German. He went down, a big bunch of smoke, and could hear him, you know. And so that was sort of a scary thing to watch that. We went through areas where battles had been fought. You know, I remember this one. Just lots of horses. See, they used horses and wagons, and there was dead horses and wagons banged up and other armor equipment destroyed, and but you'd see these things, but they'd happen before we got there. And of course, in the winter time, you would see things not nice to talk about, but I can remember we were stopped at this one rest area, and it was really cold. It was really cold. And here come a truck, and it was just loaded with corpses. It just laid in there like logs. But you've seen these different things that give you a dreary feeling, but you knew that they had served their best, you know. There was a lot of sights. That's about all that I, can say. 'Cause I can't say that I was actually in any of the fighting, and so a lot of guys could give you a lot of, information on that. But
for those of us who have not ever been in wars, I mean, I've interviewed a lot of people, and I hear stories, but I don't think we really understand. Like, what's important is for you to say, you come across this stuff. What does war does? I mean, what does the building look like? What does the ground look like? What does it look like after a battle's been fought? And here you come upon it, and I mean, people talk about the glory of war and stuff, but that's what we don't know, I don't think.
Yeah, well, I think you have a different frame of mind when you're actually in it, and you know what can happen, and so you're just more prepared to take what you see, and what happens, because something could happen any time to you, a bomb hit you or what have you, but I think your frame of mind is different once you're in and involved.
Do you think that's what the training prepared you
Oh,
for?
sure, I'm sure that means a lot. I mean, that means a lot, because they talk war and how to protect yourself and so forth. So it's just an experience that you live with.
I've never had anybody tell me about the training of the protecting yourself. I mean, go shoot somebody, but what are the things that they taught you to physically take care of yourself?
Well, you learn how to move on your belly to stay away from firing at you. You just you learn how to shoot a gun and how to be aggressive. But I just really can't think. I mean, they just work with you to be in good physical shape, and so you can withstand a lot of physical problems. It could be having to be up for long hours at one time without rest. Of course, they teach you how to dig holes to get into if you need to do that. And it's just how to live on your own too. And just generally, that's about it, I guess. Yeah.
Is there one person, or is there somebody, or two or three or something, men that you learned to really admire during your service?
Oh, well, yes, there's different ones. I remember Captain Green. He was my CO, my first CO, first commanding officer. And he was a soldier. He was well built, and boy, when he talked, you knew that he was in charge. He was a real commander, and I really admired him. And but understand that he was killed over there. Matter of fact, he was in a tank, and he was decapitated, I heard. So that made me feel sad about that. But he was a real soldier. I mean, I just admired him because of his physique and his commanding points about him, but I really admired him. And there was others, and it's too bad. I mean, different ones, you know, they lost their lives too, but they were forward-going guys, and you know, you just admired their strengths and attitudes, and it could be that's why they maybe lost their lives. They're really aggressive type people, and so. But there's different ones, and Captain Bartholomew, the last captain we had, he was just a great guy. He was a wonderful person, and he was one you could talk to just like, you know, any good friend. I remember when we were just going overseas, we just left the port, and he called myself and first sergeant together and had a powwow with us, you know, what we were expected to do and so forth. And I remember him telling me, he says, "Now, Russ," he says, "that if anything happens to Sergeant Koch," he says, "you're going to have to be my first sergeant." See, we worked close together and knew pretty much what the other one did and so forth, and so I just prayed that nothing would happen to him, and fortunately nothing did. And so he was a great guy too. But anyway, Captain Bartholomew, he got through everything all right. He just passed away here, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, and but he got a lot of awards or from his commanding experiences over there. So I admired him. He was a good guy.
Tell me what you learned about yourself during your time in the service.
What did I learn about myself? Well, I learned that had to depend on the Lord for our lives, and and I knew that prayers back home was being lifted up for me, and so I knew that that was a way to live, to be sure that you had yourself in order to live on eternally if something happened here, you know. So that was, that was impressed on me during my time in the service. And you knew that you were loved by many people because I'd get a lot of letters and my parents and all, and you knew that your life is worth something. But I suppose that's probably the biggest thing. And of course, that's after I got out of the service, I met my wife, and we've enjoyed living the Christian life. I have three children, and 5 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren now. And so we're happy. We've been blessed with family like that.
What did you do when you, let's put you back just a tad, where were you when you found out that victory had been?
I think I was in Heidenheim, Germany, and we got word that the Germans had given up, and of course everybody was whoopee, and that was quite a great feeling to know that they'd finally given up. But I think it was Heidenheim.
So did you have enough points to come on home, or were you there for a while?
I had, yeah,
company down.
There was a possibility that I could been sent on to the Pacific Theater, but I had enough points that I could come on home too. And so after, of course, the 12th Armored disbanded over there, and I was put into some service group. I forget the name of it, but I worked in an office over there, and but anyway, I just can't remember how long it was that I was over there after the war was over. But I got home, and I forget when the date the war ended. But anyway, I was shipped home in January of '46, and was discharged at Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania.
And what did you do after that? Did you go to college or go to?
No, I really didn't. I see the inland manufacturing company where I was employed before I went in. Well, they assured me they'd have a job for me when I got back. Well, of course, the office I was in when I left was done away with. They didn't need to make carbines anymore. And but they offered me a job in, I think it was a shipping department. And I really didn't care for that. The gentleman that was in charge, I knew from the past he was kind of hard to work with. And so a friend of mine that had took a job with what they called a retail credit company. That was an investigating company for insurance companies and so forth. Said they needed a man. there, and so I went over and applied and was given the job. So I did that for I think 4 years after I got out of the service. And then I had an opportunity to go with an insurance company as an insurance adjuster. And so I did that and wound up being the claims manager of the Ohio Farmers Insurance Company there in Dayton, Ohio. And one of the agencies that I serviced, which was in the town where we lived, we'd built a new home up there in 1963 in West Milton, Ohio. And the gentleman there in that agency got after me to consider coming into the agency with him. And so after, I imagine probably about a year, I decided I would go in with him. And so that's what I wound up doing, was being in the insurance agency business, and till I retired. I retired in 1977, and business was good to me. And so for retiring present, well, we bought a new Oldsmobile and decided to take a trip to Hawaii, and so that's why we we spent my retirement. So anyway, that's what I've been retired then since '77. I was only 56, I think, so that was kind of early. But being in the insurance business, I found that there was a lot of people that waited kind of long to retire, and then something happened that they didn't get to enjoy their retirement. And so I decided, well, this might be my opportunity to enjoy. So that's what we did. And so it's been a real good life. I got involved in the Gideon ministry back in '73, and that's been a big part of our life, seeing that Bibles are distributed throughout the world. Matter of fact, we're in 175 countries now with them, and distributing over 1 million copies every week somewhere. So it's quite a nice experience. And
I want to ask you, I usually ask everybody this question before we finish. This tape, hopefully, unless the Lord comes back, will be listened to in years to come. What do you want people to remember? Something that you learned, a bit of advice, as somebody would think about World War II and our future?
well, we, of course, went to war to keep our freedoms, to live our lives in a meaningful way, and to be a witness to what is good and right, and to be part of it. We only have a short time here on earth, and to live the way that our Lord teaches us to live, and to be the witness that we should be, and to be able to keep that type of living. Sometimes we have to protect ourselves. And so if that time comes to protect, we got to protect, whatever it takes. We might have to make a lot of sacrifices and do things that not pleasant, but if things are necessary, why, we have to do it. We just can't compromise and give in to what is wrong, because if we do, the other side of life, the evil side, will take over. And if we have the opportunity to resist that, we resist it.
What have I missed? What have I not covered that is something important that I needed to ask you about or talk to you
Oh,
about?
my. I can't really think of anything. I know that the time overseas was an experience, being out of your own country and being on foreign soil and all is to be there for what we were there for is not the nicest thing. Now, visiting those countries, which my wife and I have been able to do, a lot of them, we've enjoyed, since the war's over. We went in there and just saw the beauty and had nice experiences. But wartime, it's different. You don't see the beauty. I know when the war was over, they started giving us passes to different places, and Switzerland was one that I chose to go to. And it was just like going into a fairyland after leaving torn up Germany, It was just beautiful, it was just beautiful. And so I was blessed that way. And my wife, I thought if I ever got married, well, I'd like to take my wife to the Switzerland sometime, which we were able to do a couple of times. So anyway, no, I can't think of much else really.
Well,
I'm sure there's more, but offhand.
Right now, we don't think of it.
Yeah.
Well, I sure appreciate you visiting with us, and you've given me a perspective that I haven't necessarily seen before. And I thank you for your time.
Well, it's been my pleasure. This is unexpected to be called on to talk to you, but I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.